All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Nonprofit Enthusiast Live. I am so excited to be here and continue our conversation on measurement and evaluation and have our wonderful guest and sponsor for this month, Shamika Allen Lane from Catalyst Event Coaching on. Hey, Shamika.
Hi, how are you?
Good. You know, it's always a good time when we have you on. So I'm glad that you are here. And I just want to take a moment and thank you for sponsoring this month's Nonprofit Enthusiast Live and making it possible for us to hop on and share information this month on measurement and evaluation. So thank you so much for that. That means so much to us.
Absolutely.
And if you are here checking us out, give us let us know that you're here. Say hey in the chat box so that we know that you are here. Invite a friend, tag a friend, go ahead and add them so that they can tune in to this live. They definitely do not want to miss it. If you're catching us on replay, that go ahead and put a hashtag replay in the chat box so that we know that you're catching on replay. We love when we see the hashtag replay. So please make sure that you do that. And we're going to jump right in. So Shamika, thank you so much for coming back on. This month's topic is measurement and evaluation. But before we get started, if we could just talk a little bit about you, how you, and I know you've been on before, especially for our new viewers, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you entered in merge your journey into the nonprofit arena. And then I'm just thinking while doing that, I just thought about, and make sure you include the science piece because I love hearing about when you talk about it. So just include that too. Okay. All right. So if you could talk a little bit about that.
Okay, awesome. Well, yes, my name is Shamika Allen Lane, and I am the founder of Catalyst Event Coaching. It is like most people that have anything to do with nonprofits, a labor of love that goes along with this. But essentially, I've been in events for over 15 years. And the start of it kind of goes into the nonprofit space. So I was actually a member of a nonprofit member-based organization. And as a student, we planned all the events. And my background at the time was going into engineering. And so being that I was in that type of background, if you know anything about that industry, there's a lot of conventions, a lot of research and things that we have to present. So that's how I got introduced to the event space. I dealt with a lot of major size conferences and conventions at the time and was continuing my studies, but realized that was really my love. And so with that, I did complete my chemistry degree. It is my first love and my baby. But the way that I think about events, my approach is different from maybe the typical event planner or a lot of times designers. People mislabel terms a lot of times, even the individuals that are calling themselves that. And so my approach a lot of times is very logistical in the approach and analytical in the approach. So I decided to go ahead and technically pursue the hospitality side of things with events. So I do have a master's degree in hospitality, tourism, and management. But I also have certifications inside of it. So I'm a certified meeting professional as well as a digital event strategist. So like I said, all of that is still combined with the science of things. I actually, because of my love and background in science, created a framework that is more of a scientific approach for people to actually look at and plan their events. And it's the way my mind works. So it works for me, but it's another way for people to look at it. So yeah.
I love it. I love when you talk about combining the science with the events. It's not just planning an event, but also having the framework and the process in place in order to be able to do so. I love it. I love it. So this month's topic is measurement and evaluation. And I'm sure through that science, you have a lot to share. What are some tips that you have for nonprofit organizations when it comes to this area of being able to assess the success maybe of your events and your programs, and evaluate. Any tips that you have to
Sure.
share? Mm-hmm.
Sure. So in my framework,
Mm-hmm.
there are 5 pillars, and one of the very first pillars is goals and objectives. And so for me, that's where it should all start. That's what everything kind of goes back to. And so I work with all of my clients. Because, by the way, this is a framework. No matter what type of service my clients are coming to me for, we use this framework. So whether it's regular project management, if I'm doing it, an event for them, or I'm kind of guiding their team and putting some things together for them, we still use this framework. So goals and objectives is the first pillar. And so for me, that's the guiding pillar. That's the pillar where we get into the meat and potatoes of what you're trying to do, the purpose that you're trying to do it. And so just to kind of poke at that a little bit, because I think sometimes people see it very surface and they don't think about it a little bit deeper, is I like to use the example of a birthday party. So I ask people, what is your goals and objectives for this? What's the purpose of the birthday party? And a lot of times people think it's because it's their birthday. That's not the reason. That's never the reason. That's the excuse. That's the excuse. Usually it's because they want to celebrate. They want to get people together. They haven't seen them in a while. It could be they want to dress up, it could be different things as to why they're wanting to do this, but they're, using that good excuse because that's the motivation for others to come out to this celebration. They use that to go ahead and push for it, but it's not their birthday. It's just, this is how we're going to push it. And so I like to use that example so people can look at it a little bit deeper to determine what's the real reason why we're doing this, so that we can kind of clarify what our goals and objectives are. I think very often when it comes to goals and objectives, people don't match that to the evaluation factor a lot of times. Somehow, I don't know how it gets separated, but they don't measure it. And so that's actually my 5th pillar. And the framework is evaluation. And so when I work with my clients, what I like to do is we look directly at those goals and objectives, and we create metrics, all those key performing indicators to look at on the back end without emotion. Did we succeed for this? Was this successful? Because oftentimes we look at maybe attendance, and attendance sometimes is a good indicator, but 1, it's not the only indicator. But 2, a lot of times it's not the best indicator, especially for a nonprofit. A lot of times it's about building awareness, but you have to find a way to measure if you've actually built that awareness, if you've gotten that word out. So something that we can look at tangibly, to say we did what we wanted to do.
Love it. So, okay, you shared 2 pillars, goals and objectives, which I absolutely love, because oftentimes we'll get ready to plan an event, plan a program. We saw this need. Hey, we want to launch an entrepreneur program, or we want to do an entrepreneur retreat for the youth, or whichever. But it's easy to just jump right into planning. Like, okay, so let's set the date, let's set the time, where we're going to have it, how we're going to, it's easy to just jump right in there. But, you sharing like, no, why are you doing? Like, take a moment and think about what is the purpose of it? Just like the birthday party example that you gave, it's not, it's an excuse to just have the party, but it's more than that. It's like, no, we want to get dressed up. We want to, have time with our friends or our family and so forth. So I absolutely love that you share that. So when we're planning our events, planning our programs, thinking first, what is the goals and objectives? Why are we doing this before diving into using all our resources and everything, and at the end being able to evaluate it, because we never identified the why in the first place.
Amen. Amen. And what I would say to that as well is when you're looking at all of that and you're able to clearly state what your goals and objectives are, now you can communicate those things to all of your stakeholders, right? And so, especially when you're working with vendors that you may be outsourcing, so it could be a photographer, it could be whoever that you're working with, social media. If you're able to share that with them, they a lot of times will tell you how they can help you reach that, because now they understand what you're trying to do, rather than just saying A to B, exactly what you want, and they don't know where you're going with the information that you're asking for.
I love that. That's such a good point, because you do bring others into the mix and they just jump right in, and they're probably just filling their role, but not knowing the ultimate bigger why as to, well, what is the overall, and yeah, if a photographer know your goal is to be able to highlight this person, or make sure that these, whatever your goals are, objective, depending on the event, or they're able to even zoom in on that from their portion of what their contribution is to that program. So that is absolutely amazing. I love it. I love it. Keep it coming. Keep it coming. Yeah. So let me go over to the chat really quick, and then we'll come back over. And if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat box. If you're planning an event, planning a program, and you're like, I don't know where to start, or you feel like something that I know used to happen to me a lot. It felt like a cycle. I remember when we first started our nonprofit, let's say every year we're going to host this family fun day, but then every year it felt like the first year.
Yeah.
I know that sounds crazy, but it was kind of like every year it's like, here we go again. Like, so it's like you're starting over, so then over the years, of course, we learn to take the time and kind of figure, so what is the purpose of having this? And then also anything we do, developing more of a template, like a rinse and repeat type format. Have that process in place and the system in place. So now it's much easier. And that way, if we get a phone call, hey, we a funder, hey, I got this. You guys think you could do it's easy. Okay, pull that out, and then boom, we're back into it.
Absolutely.
So I love that you shared those.
With the evaluation phase, because I didn't talk a ton about it when I was talking earlier, but with the evaluation phase, there is so many things, even with that phase, that I look at. And so, yes, there are metrics, excuse me, that we basically take from what we created with the goals and objectives and look to see, did we reach these items? How close did we come to it, to determine if it's a success? Because I do get that question a lot. How do we know this is a success? When do we know, like, we got to stop doing this? This isn't working. And they're going off a lot of times revenue and attendance, which again has some validity, but it depends on what you're looking to do. But even outside of that, when you're looking at evaluation, in my case, for my pillar, there are so many other aspects that we're looking at too with evaluation. And so, yes, there's a debrief that we do with our team, and we consider the stakeholders. There is feedback that we receive, surveys, all sorts of different things that we're looking at. But I even encourage people to make sure that they are looking at even things like media, any media assets, what all of that social media analytics look like as well, because a lot of times we have one good year, and then, like you say, the next year it feels like the first year all over again. But if you go back and you look at your stats and your information, you know that our highest engaging posts were, these types of posts. When we did it this type of time frame, this time of day, you look at those things to see, like, okay, that's what really worked. Or do we need to tweak something just a little bit to see how it's going to land? And most certainly, because again, we're talking about nonprofits. When you're looking at PR and publicity, that matters beyond belief. And so you definitely want to know who those key players were that actually put the word out for you, right? So if you had a newspaper feature, or you was featured on some type of news outlet, you want to go back to those people. You want to keep that relationship going throughout the year, because It does change frequently, but you want to go ahead and reach out to them because they're likely to utilize it again if they thought it was newsworthy the first time, So go ahead and reach out to them again. You should probably know and notate when you're doing the evaluation what that time frame looked like of when they were responsive, when they said reach out to them. So you want to consider all of those things so that the next time you aren't feeling like it's the first time.
Right. That's right. Love it. And I love that you also mentioned the event debrief, because a lot of times leading up to an event, I remember I look at sometimes when I'm working through events, if I see the emojis, as you have that smiley face one, you starting out, oh, let's do this, whichever, you got that fire one, you on fire, whichever, and then all of a sudden you crying today, it's like, oh my gosh, everything. And then you kind of go back to, oh, I love it. So I love that you talk about that event debrief, because what happens sometimes, because we went through all those different twists and turns with planning an event, we're just ready to just like, that's it, all right, next, what's the next, because we got other things going on as well, other programs, other events kind of happening, you just, jump right into it. But it is important to take a moment and take that time and build that into your timeline from the very beginning, to debrief, to take a moment, hear from your stakeholders, the team, come together, what went well, what didn't go well, what can we do better next year, so that when you get ready to do it again, it's not trying to remember, oh, what was it again? Or keep repeating the same cycle of things that didn't work, keep doing it, taking that time and debriefing. So I love, like, what I keep hearing through what you're saying is kind of like having the end in mind from the very, very beginning. So before you even start thinking about what is the end going to look like, what shows success for this event at the end, what will that debrief process look like with us, documenting the engagements, the social media engagements, and seeing how that moves. You talked about the news as well, and PR, what worked in that process as well, so that you could keep it in mind for future ones. So I love all the wonderful tips that you are sharing. And I think if you're listening, one of the biggest takeaways you could take away is looking at the very beginning, thinking about what is the end going to look like before you even hop into the planning and all of that. What is the end going to look like? And sometimes through looking at that, you might realize the event isn't even worth it.
Now you done said something. You have said something there, because I'm one of those people that I like to act in integrity, right? And so when people come to me and they have these ideas, sometimes I'm like, do you need to do this? Are we sure this is what we need? And so you definitely want to take a look at that, because, and that's why being clear about those goals and objectives is so important, because sometimes there's other ways to go about doing it. When you look at the goal perspective, that's really not just for this event, it's associated with the event, but that's really like a programmatic thing. That's a long-term thing that you're looking to do. And so if you're looking at that and you're thinking about, what do we have the resources for right now? And, what's going to make the most impact to this? It may or may not be an event. It could be something else totally different. It could mean we need to go get a partnership, it could mean different things. But you definitely need to assess what that looks like from a long-term perspective. And the whole time you were talking just a moment ago, it made me think about one of my clients who every time they have this event, and it's a huge event and it's part of a bigger program, but every time they do this event, they feel like, I'm never doing this again. Because they're so involved. They're so involved and attached to it. And that's very common in the nonprofit space, because these are our babies.
Yep.
So she's so attached to it. And she's like, I'm never doing it again. And each time it happens, and I've been around her even before I started my business, so I had the chance to see it from the very beginning. And this year was a little bit different.
Mhm.
So I love seeing that with her. This year was a little bit different. And because we stuck to those goals and objectives to try to evaluate on the back end, it became more
Mhm.
clear. Like normally on the back end, we might debrief and she's like, okay, talk to me in like a month or two
Mhm.
after
Right. Give me some
everything's
time.
settled and I've done
Yeah.
some other things. I'll let you know what the future plans are. This time it was like, we're doing it again
Uh-huh.
next year. She was
Yep.
clear
Oh,
on what
love
we
it.
were going. And
Yeah.
so many people, as a part of that debrief process and looking at the evaluation, so many people brought up interactions they've had with others
Mm.
that was like, they want this program in their space. They want this
Wow.
program brought to their company or to their location. And so it was like, oh no, we got to do something with this.
Gotta
We
keep
have to make
going.
this bigger and greater.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Awesome. So really quick, let me go. So hey Trey, thank you for tuning in. Hey Joe, as Joe says, debriefing is golden. It is.
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. Love it. Okay, so something I wanted, and you kind of touched on this, and I love like when you talk about it, like your connection between events and programming. Because a lot of time people may hear, oh, event coaching and just think about, well, I don't have a fundraiser coming up, or I don't have, can you talk a little bit about what that looks like for you, helping within programs or helping with programs?
Sure.
If you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So first off, I have a group, right, on
Uh-huh.
Facebook, and I'm
Mhm.
not necessarily trying to plug the group, but I'm gonna tell you the name, so by default it's a
Okay.
plug. But it's called Event Planning with a Purpose,
Mhm,
and
mhm,
that's how I look at it. Like
mhm,
what I do, it's about having a purpose, right?
mhm,
And so for me, none of these events that I work with, because I rarely work with things like social events, not to say that they don't have a purpose,
mhm,
but all of the events that I work with, they're purpose driven. And that's
mhm,
part of why the goals and objectives are very important to me and a part of the framework, because it's like, you have to know what you're
mhm,
doing this for. Like, what's the point of it? Because you'll lose focus, right? You'll
mhm,
get like distracted with the shiny object syndrome. And so, the framework that has been created in Catalyst, it really does have the programmatic standpoint in mind. And it's something that essentially you can use with programs, even if you're not just looking at an event. And in most cases, for most nonprofits, um, a lot of programs can fall into what I define
mhm,
as an event, actually. And so usually it's not that one standalone, I'm having to repack the backpack, that's usually part of a larger program. And
mhm,
so even when I work with my clients and we're talking about the goals and objectives and we're trying to come up with those metrics, because a lot of times we spend time about strategic planning
mhm,
as well. And they tell me some of their goals, and I'm like, that's great. That's your program goal. That's
mhm,
not for this event though. Like you can keep that, but I need you to understand how that correlates in this event. You have to look at what you're doing in this event to make it match and execute the vision that
mhm,
you have for that goal, right? But we need tangible things to look at this and say it was a success, because no one wants to waste resources,
mhm,
whether time, energy, whatever, on something that it's not getting them to that end goal. And so I really encourage them to kind of look at it overall. And so I'll quickly go over what those pillars are. I know we talked about two of the five,
uh-huh,
but it's goals and objectives, which we've already talked about. And then there's financial management. That's the second pillar. For me, financial management means a lot of things, but I will tell you right now, what's important in a nonprofit space is what you take home. People get
mhm,
so caught up on how much money they raise, but they're not looking at how much they spent and all of those other things. And quick little thing about Shamika and Catalyst in regards to that is, if you're looking at pillar number two closely and you're doing that for each time you're doing something, one of your projects, one of your events, it's not often you're going to have a special fundraising event, because
mhm,
you're maximizing your revenue each opportunity you have. And
mhm,
so that's kind of how we look at that. And then the third pillar is logistics, which is my sweet lane, my my zone of genius. And then we have the fourth, which is the actual execution. It's
Mhm.
doing the actions in the moment so that those individuals can do what they need to do and be serviced. Or if we're talking about events, then that's when you're actually on site with those events. And of course, the last one that we talked about earlier is evaluation. And so if you look at the 5 of those, it really does apply to your programming altogether. So you want to do all of them, so that
Mhm.
when you get to that evaluation phase, you're looking at the entire process of it from start to finish. And you can see from there where you want to make any tweaks. Because once you get to that evaluation phase, a lot of times you're looking at it and you're like, I think we might want to shift focus.
Mhm.
Sometimes you might shift what those goals and objectives may look like moving forward, because maybe something is not doing the impact that you thought, or maybe you're impacting areas you had no idea that now are becoming important.
Love it. Awesome. Thank you for sharing those pillars. So we got goals and objectives, financial management, logistics, execution, and evaluation when
Yes.
planning your events. And then also calling catalysts, because I'm sure there's some secret ingredients in each of these.
And I'm looking
Uh,
at the comments and I see Joe made one about gross versus net. Honey, we could do a
mhm.
whole session on that.
Yes. Okay. That is
Yes.
right. Yes. Love it. Love it. Anything else that you would like to share? So before we kind of wind down and have you share about how we can stay connected and learn more. Um anything else you'd like to share around the topic of measurement and evaluation?
I would just say making sure that you realize that everything is measurable. That would be the biggest thing. Everything is measurable. And if you approach it from that standpoint, sometimes you may have to determine what that measurement is and what it looks like. For me in my personal life, a lot of times, even making decisions, I make decisions before I get into the situation, because I know my emotions are going to take over. And so I like to be like, okay, if this, then this. And so that's pretty much what we need to do inside of our programs. We want to go ahead and look at, what do we consider success? And you
Mhm.
need to paint a picture of what that looks like. You need to be specific. I like to say SMART goals, but you need to be specific of what that looks like, because if you say a general term, you saying that term may mean something different to me than it means to you. But if you can specify what that looks like, if you're giving me a percentage, if you're giving me a direct number, if you give me a date, if you're giving me something tangible, then I'm like, okay, we did it or we didn't. It's either yes or
Mhm.
no.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you. So, how can we stay connected? How can we learn more about this wonderful topic?
Yes. So I am on Catalyst Event Coaching on both LinkedIn as well as Facebook. And
Okay.
as I mentioned earlier, there is a Facebook group that we have called Event Planning with a Purpose. You can join that. And then something very exciting, we are about to start doing monthly sessions and classes each month. So we have our first one
Yay.
coming up on May 18th at 3 p.m. And guess what? It kind of goes along with this topic. It is the measure
Love
your event
it.
success, metrics simplified. And for this audience, we do have a code. I think Lashina's going to drop the
Yep.
link in there for the actual class itself. But there is a code for you all to take advantage of a discount and get that at $20. But of course, if you have any questions or anything, you can definitely reach out to me. The email address also is Catalyst email address website, catalysteventcoaching.com. But my email address is Shamika at catalysteventcoaching.com.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you. And once again, thank you so much for being this month's sponsor. So one of the things that I want to share is, remember we started a giveaway a few weeks ago, and I know that our goal is to reach 1,000, and I think we can do it. I believe when I last checked, we we're like at 930 in the group, but we can't do it alone.
No.
Just like, in the nonprofit, we got to do this together. So I'm gonna ask you to take a moment and go up in the group, click on the invite button and select at least 10 people in there. So we're going to extend the giveaway that we had to win a 30-minute strategy session with Shamika. We're extending that until next Wednesday, 11:59 p.m. But why not do it now, right? Just go ahead, click invite, put 10 people, and then you'll be entered in to win that giveaway for a strategy session, a 30-minute strategy session with Shamika over at Catalyst Event Coaching. So go ahead and do that. And we're going to extend it until next week, again, Wednesday, and I'll come on the live on Thursday. We'll be announcing who the winners are for that. So please take the moment and do that. So we're going to take a moment, pause, go up at the top. You'll see invite, select 10 people. Just do it now. What you waiting on, right? Just select 10 people that you think could benefit from the information that we have here in the group. And then from there, we'll be announcing the winners next week. So please take a moment and do that. And then of course, ask those 10 people to invite another 10 people. I really believe we can get to this 1,000 within the next week. We've done that before. It's possible, right? So you guys set these goals and just keep pushing for these goals. So thank you all so much.
Look, you got to tell them the benefits of being in the group, because they
Yes.
don't have to tell their people.
You're right. So of course, you all know the many benefits we have. One of them is we come in, we have wonderful sponsors such as Shamika that come into the group and allow us to come on weekly and do live sessions or provide recorded videos for you all. So I don't know many groups we just giving it away. Thanks to our sponsor, we're able to just give it to you all. If you go to the guide section of the group, you'll see it looks like a course in there, a free course that's available to you. So even if you missed any of the lives, you could go in there and let's say you're looking for a topic such as board development and leadership. You'll see that section, board development and leadership. You'll see all our past live videos or any resources that we dropped in the group related to that in the guide section. You have a community because once we hit 1,000, that's 1,000 more people that you can tap into to help you on your nonprofit journey. So a lot of times when you're stuck, just drop that message in the group. Hey, anybody? And normally someone or, has a resource or something to be able to support you. So the more that we grow, the more insight that we get in order to support each other. So definitely make sure that you take a moment. And I'm sure a lot of you probably did it already. Go ahead, click the invite button, 10 people, and then we'll announce the giveaway winners next week. Awesome. All right. So thank you so much, Shamika, for coming on once again. Thank you for being our sponsor this month. We appreciate, and then thank you for the bonus giveaway as well. We truly appreciate you believing in the nonprofits and what we're doing here in the community. So thank you for that. Awesome. So that is all that I have today for Nonprofit Enthusiasts Live. And we will see you all next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.